The Oklahoma Sooners have a big challenge ahead of them, but so do the Texas Longhorns.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams, and the Oklahoma Sooners will take on the number one team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns, this Saturday afternoon in the Cotton Bowl, the Red River Showdown. One of the greatest weekends of the year, no matter what the records look like, no matter what the rankings look like, no matter what the teams look like, it always turns out to be a barn burner in Dallas. And the Oklahoma Sooners might be a bigger test for the Texas Longhorns than people are giving them credit for. Right now, Oklahoma is an underdog by 14.5 points in a lot of places. But Trace Ford, Oklahoma cheetah, edge rusher, defensive end, whatever you want to call him, had this to say when he met with the media on Monday. He says, they haven't played a defense like this, Texas. I'm excited to play against them and see what we do against a high-powered offense like they are. Now, giving Texas a lot of love because they are a really good offense. They have a really good team. Let's not misquote them here or take anything out of context. But I think there's a reality here, Jay, that Texas hasn't faced a defense quite like Oklahoma's yet.
No, it's all about a standard reality check while at the same time recognizing that you have a formidable opponent. Again, this Red River Rivalry shootout, whatever you want to call it, whatever old school way you want to say it, this game is always weird, right? It's never a situation, regardless of who's the favorite, regardless of how big of a favorite you are, this game gets super muddy because not only is the hate really flowing through the blood, both teams typically try to get up for this game. And the one big challenge that Texas has, again, this defense is something that they have not seen yet, right? If you go back through their schedule, they haven't faced a defense as good as Oklahoma's. Now, Oklahoma has faced an offense that's pretty powered, similarly to the way Texas is. The big difference is that the way Auburn and Tennessee play is that Auburn likes to give the ball back, and Tennessee gets super conservative over time because their quarterback's young. The one thing you can give to Steve Sarkisian is the third year in his system, his quarterbacks usually flourish. They do a much better job, and he's a masterful tactician at running plays. So for the Oklahoma defense, the big thing is going to be, can we turn up the intensity like Brent Venables did in his stint at Clemson and be able to really make it difficult for Texas to run those long, deep passes that they like to do where the quarterback has all day to throw it? If we can make sure that there's no time, this game is going to be a lot tougher for Texas than people want to, admit to.
And I look at last year's game. Oklahoma's defense only allowed 23 points. Remember, Texas had the blocked punt return for a touchdown. And we could argue that this defense is better than last year's defense. I've made the argument that this offense for Texas may not be as good as last year's offense was. No Jonathan Brooks, no Xavier Worthy, Xavier Worthy is tearing it up for the Chiefs right now. No JT Sanders, who's a rookie with Carolina. I mean, they lost a lot of offensive pieces. Offensive line's improved. I will give Texas Longhorn fans that. More experience, they're better. Quinn Ewers is back for Texas. We'll talk about that in the third segment. But I think what we're seeing is we're meeting in the middle a little bit, where Texas offense maybe took a step back just in their capabilities. Now, a good wide receiver trio. I'm not going to sit here and say they're not. They're good. But Oklahoma's defense has closed the gap on them going into this year. Now, a lot of people are going to be screaming, what about Michigan? Okay, Michigan's a really, really good defense. But let's check the numbers, okay? Oklahoma in SP Plus rankings, better than Michigan. In yards per carry, better than Michigan. Rush yards per game, okay, Michigan's got us there. Pass yards per game, Oklahoma 75, Michigan 115. Michigan kind of struggles. Turnovers per game, Oklahoma, number 4 in the nation. Only one Power 4 team ahead of Oklahoma, and that's Maryland. Weird.
Maryland.
Yeah. Michigan, 71st in turnovers per game. So, you want to just say, just from a observational standpoint, Oklahoma's defense is better than Michigan's defense. But from a statistical standpoint, Oklahoma's defense is better than Michigan's defense.
Almost a long shot. If you go look at the efficiencies, defense efficiencies or whatnot, Oklahoma's a top 10 team in the country, right? Michigan is not sniffing that. And one of the defenses they faced with this offense has been Tennessee's, who's considered the number one team in defense efficiency. Now, granted, you can make the state argument that Tennessee hasn't really played anybody, and then when Oklahoma played them, they had to switch quarterbacks, right? Texas is number two, right behind Tennessee. And technically, you can say the same thing about Texas. Like, who has Texas actually played that has an offense that has actually any power, right? Michigan is very big on running the ball and trying to run it down your throat. Texas was prepared for that. They just loaded the box and said, throw the ball on us. We dare you. And guess
We
what?
dare you.
They couldn't. They dared them, and they definitely won that dare. They won the double dog dare, and they won the triple dog dare, no sights, because Michigan is not built to throw the ball. They've actually gone to their third quarterback now. So they're still trying to figure that thing out. That's the difference here at Oklahoma, right? I think that Michael Hawkins is ready for the challenge. Now, granted, he is a freshman, so he's going to have to show us that he is ready. But, I mean, he played a lot of Texas football, and so he's used to playing against some really good teams and carrying his team around. Granted, it's against high schoolers, but some of those high schoolers have ended up at a lot of D1 programs. So for him, the key thing is going to be keep the turnovers down and everything. But let's talk about that defense. That's the focus here. Oklahoma's defense is susceptible to the big play. But I believe it was because they allowed that at the time. There wasn't really much discipline when it comes to stopping some of the deeper plays. And I think that once we start seeing some of the newer packages they're going to put out there, the newer packages with certain players that are built specifically to keep up with the speed, I think Texas is going to see something a little different. They're not going to be ready for how good this defense actually is.
And I want to go on the flip side here. This is going to be the best offense that Oklahoma has faced this season.
Great.
Tennessee currently ranks a little bit better than Texas in points per game. But again, just from an observational standpoint, Texas is a much better offense. At least they've looked better on the field. Even with Arch Manning running the show, they've just looked better. The one thing I'll say about Steve Sarkisian and the way he's working with Arch Manning, he's not necessarily holding Arch back. He's letting Arch go play football, and turnovers are going to happen, understanding that turnovers are a part of development. While Josh Heupel with Nico kind of holding him back a little bit, playing a little bit way too conservative, and we saw how that affected them in that game against Arkansas. They've been having this conservative approach with Nico, but then when they had to go and they had to throw at the end of the game, it's 4th and 10, 4th and 5 or something like that, and you got to get a play into the end zone. Nico doesn't pull the trigger and doesn't even give his team a chance because he's concerned about the turnover. So I will say, like, the Texas offense, they're gonna sling it, man. They're not gonna be unafraid about pushing the ball down the field, and they've got really good players in Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden and who's Jonte Cook, the swimming trophies guy, Jonte Cook, talking about all those swimming trophies that Texas has got in the case. But he's hoping to add some trophies to Oklahoma's trophy case or Texas's trophy case this year. So they have a really talented offense. But I think Oklahoma's defense, I mean, if they can take away the deep passing game, like you talked about, if they can take away the run game, remember, Texas is dealing with a lot of injuries to their running back room. If they can slow the run game down, if they can put Quinn Ewers in some 3rd and long situations, 2nd and long situations, that's going to feed into what Oklahoma wants to do. We saw last year, they did try to use the quick passing game against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was able to slow it down because they're a really good tackling team, a good team tackling team. So listen, it's a tough matchup. Texas is going to be difficult. It's going to be a big challenge. But I think Oklahoma's defense is going to be up to the challenge, especially with a week to recover, a week for Danny Stutzman to get a little bit healthier, a week for those younger guys to continue to develop, go back and watch the Auburn tape, figure out what they got to do better, and move forward. Brent Venables understands the challenge that awaits Oklahoma. Let's hear what the head coach had to say coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. All right, Sooner fans, it's time for the Roy Player of the Week. The Roy app lets you directly support your favorite athletes. Unlike collectives where you can make a donation to a general fund, Roy lets you choose the specific athlete you want to support. You back the players you care about, and in return, get exclusive content after the season like personal videos and updates. And the best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't create the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm choosing Javante Barnes I need to see my man take a step forward in the running game, help take a little bit of the load off of Michael Hawkins' shoulders, and run the ball effectively for the Oklahoma Sooners. We just contributed to this campaign on Roy, and you want to join us by making a payment as little as $10. When enough of us contribute, it's not just about the dollars, it's about the message we send to the player. Our collective support helps keep him connected to our school. Plus, Roy is doing their part to bring fans closer to their schools and athletes with an exciting giveaway. Roy is giving one lucky fan 2 tickets to any game of their choice in November. Here's how to enter. Just download the Roy app in the App Store or Google Play Store. Use code LOCKEDON when signing up, and you're entered. Already on Roy, make a payment to any athlete's campaign, and you'll also be automatically entered. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for official rules. Download Roy and try it out. There's no subscription, no recurring fees. And for as little as $10, you get in the NIL game. Roy, support the players, change the game. All right, so we talked about what the challenge awaits for the Oklahoma offense and the Oklahoma defense and the Texas offense. Brent Venables spoke on his radio show and discussed what the challenge is for the Oklahoma Sooners, but he also had this to say. Texas is going to be a great challenge. I think 4 times in the last 20 years, you've had a favorite by 13 plus points, and those 4 games have been 2-2. We know that the point spreads don't win the games, but we know we've got to go play well. We've got to prepare well. We have a great week of practice and put together a great plan. Jay, I mean, we saw this past weekend in the Texas A&M and Missouri games, how those point spreads can be a little bit revealing as to what these teams look like. Now, Texas favored by more than 14 points going into the game, but it's a rivalry game, so it's hard to always judge what this is going to be. And Venables said it himself, 2-2 in spreads that are 13 plus over the last 20 years. So again, that's not going to guarantee Oklahoma anything. At the same time, we just talked about how Oklahoma's defense can keep this one a tight one.
Yeah, the Oklahoma defense has a really good chance to keep this one close, and the offense has a good chance to surprise a lot of people, right? One of the big things that the Sooners defense and offense has, kind of struggled with is being complementary to each other. And BV is correct, right? This is going to be a big challenge. And you said it perfectly, John. Over the last couple of weeks, man, we've watched teams just completely go the opposite direction of their spreads. And I think that Alabama loss as the number 1 team has really thrown a lot of people, a little wrench into a lot of people's predictions this season. Nobody expected Vanderbilt to go be at home and win that game. Some people didn't believe that Bama was going to be Georgia. And then a week later that happens. And so we know that this game means a lot more on both sides. And to be honest, I've talked about this before. I've had Texas fans say that, this is our Super Bowl, this is Oklahoma's Super Bowl, and it's not for Texas. So if they don't take it as seriously as we are, it could be a problem. And I'm going to be honest, I do think that they're overlooking us. It does not feel like they actually care as much as we do, that it feels like they're preparing their minds for Georgia because Georgia's going to come into DKR and they're going to go in there and try to be physical. They're going to go in there with the completely opposite game plan of what they had against Alabama. They don't want Texas to beat them the way that Alabama did. So they're going to try to go early and often and keep the pressure on what Texas is trying to do, as well as try to run the ball down their throat. And so because of that, I sense that Texas is going to be like, Oklahoma, they're going to be a challenge, but they're going to be as much of a challenge. The last time that this spread was this high, I believe that I think Texas did end up winning it convincingly. But I think the last time that Oklahoma's dealt with the injuries that they've dealt with this year, we actually the game actually ended up being like 16-13 in 2009. And so it was a lot closer because the defense was really, really stout, but we lost Sam Bradford to start the year, and Bob Stoops had to figure out a few different things. We had Landry Jones, who was a redshirt freshman out there playing or whatnot. And so the question now is, can Michael Hawkins outperform what we got out of Landry Jones, who statistically is one of the top quarterbacks to play at Oklahoma?
I think going into this one with Michael Hawkins, they're going to be less conservative than what they were 2 years ago in the Red River Showdown when they were without Dylan Gabriel. And their offensive game plan for that week was Wildcat. And it worked for a minute. And then Texas decided, hey, we're done with that. And you didn't trust Davis Bevel to throw the football. You didn't trust Nick Evers to be in the game. And I just think that they have a lot more trust in Michael Hawkins than they did any of the quarterbacks that they had available to them in 2022. So you're not going to see an offensive game plan like that. Now, Oklahoma's got to be better running the ball than they were that game. They were running the ball pretty well, but they couldn't cash in when they got on Texas's side of the field. They've got an offensive line that got healthier going into Auburn. Now they've had 2 weeks to get ready for Texas. More, time to be healthy, more time to just gel as a unit. I think that's going to benefit them. And again, you're not going up against a Texas defensive line that I think is as good as what they had a year ago. Talented dudes. Colin Simmons, a true freshman as well, a very talented player he's going to test Oklahoma's offensive line. But you don't have the dudes in the middle, like a Tavondre Sweat and the other guy, I'm blanking on his, Byron Murphy. You don't have those guys. Now, good players, but do you have top 100 picks in the NFL draft on your defensive line right now? Future Colin Simmons, but are they that right now? We knew that with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy last year, right? They were two of the most highly sought after defensive tackles in the 2024 draft class. And so it's a little bit different ballgame. And so Oklahoma's offensive line has to step up because you're going to have to get some things going in the run game so that you're not putting Michael Hawkins in 3rd and long situations against those really talented edge rushers that Texas is going to have. But I just think that, listen, this offense is going to be better than what we saw 2 years ago. And the defense I think is a lot better than what we saw 2 years ago too. And so this is a big game. It's a big test, but I don't know, man. I just have a feeling that it's going to turn out to be a lot closer of a ball game than everybody's giving credit for. I think you're right. There's a lot looking ahead to the primetime game against Georgia that's going to be at DKR, and it's going to be easy for Texas and Texas fans to look ahead to that one, whereas Oklahoma fans, listen, South Carolina is going to provide some challenges and some tests, but nobody's looking past Texas to South Carolina. And that's no disrespect to South Carolina. It's just we understand the prize that sits ahead of us. You go beat Texas, and that changes the trajectory of your season. Also, big Dwayne The Rock Johnson eye roll gif on this being Oklahoma Super Bowl and not Texas's. You can see the difference in our numbers here for the show, in the social media interactions that are happening. Texas cares just as much about this one as Oklahoma fans do.
Yeah, they pretend they don't, but we all know that they should. But,
Yeah.
It is what it is. But at the same time, Oklahoma, luckily, the way the Sooners are playing now, they've got some continuity in the offensive line. This will probably be the 3rd week that we have the same guys playing on the offensive line. And that's going to be very, very helpful. And the one thing we like to do is we will body up against Texas. We care. And so because of that, the good thing is we're starting to see some continuity at the offensive line. That's going to be a plus going forward. And so pretty excited to see what we put out there on the field.
Yeah, Texas is going to be feeling my 4-year-old son's favorite song in this one, The Thunder. They're going to feel that thunder, the lightning and the thunder, because Oklahoma's going to bring the physicality. They're not going to back down at all from the Longhorns because they saw what they could do last year against a really good Texas team. Again, that was a top 5 Texas team that Oklahoma bodied up and ended up beating. So who's going to start for Texas at quarterback? I think we've got a pretty good answer about that going ahead. How's it going to matter for Oklahoma? What can they do? We'll discuss coming up next on Locked On Sooners.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start your season with big returns on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So if you want to just, in the middle of the game, you want to check out some live stats, you can see all of that on the same screen, play-by-play, all of that from the page where you do your bets. Like right now, the Oklahoma Sooners are a 14.5-point dog in this game. And so Sooners have a good chance of doing an upset. And honestly, if you decide that you want to put something on it, you can join in the action. All you got to do is get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed whenever you place your first $5 bet. You can do that over at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, so it's going to be Quinn Ewers starting for the Texas Longhorns this week, coming off an abdominal injury, and that's going to be interesting to follow. Is he fully healthy? Is he still dealing with any pain in his abdomen? If you've ever strained your abdomen, ever had abdominal surgery of any, you know how much your abdomen is involved in everything you do, from dropping back taking a snap, throwing the football, trying to run. Your
To
abs are involved in
breathing, to
everything. Breathing,
breathing.
every hit you take. Again, I don't know where Quinn Ewers is at with that, but if he's even dealing with a little bit of pain, that could be a factor in this game. I'm not going to sit here and say that Quinn Ewers is a better matchup for Oklahoma's defense than Arch Manning is. I will say he's not as athletic as Arch. And so that, I think, creates an opportunity for Oklahoma's defense to be able to get to him on the pass rush, maybe a little bit more simply than maybe getting to Arch. Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback. He can throw the ball. He's very experienced at this point in his career. He can make every single throw in the arsenal. And so it is going to be a tough test. But we saw it a year ago. Oklahoma's pressure packages could get to Quinn at different times. And we've seen Zach Alley even dial it up a little bit further. And so as we talked about in the first segment for Oklahoma's defense, if they can get to Quinn early and they can get to him quick, that's going to completely throw everything off in the Texas passing attack.
Yeah, and with Quinn had that abdominal injury, right? Breathing, walking, talking, all of that stuff. You can feel that in your abdomen. I mean, do it now. Just put your hand there, and when you start talking or breathing, you can feel the tense, the way your abs and your core tenses up while you do that. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. The biggest thing is that mobility, right? You mentioned it, that Arch Manning is much more mobile. We've watched him run. I mean, I think he had 21 miles per hour when he sprinted down the sideline for a touchdown in one of the games that Texas played. And the kid's very athletic. He's like the most athletic Manning that you probably ever gonna
Of
see
all
outside of
time.
Arch, right? Outside of Arch, he's like his grandfather Arch
Yeah.
more than anything than he is Peyton and Eli. There's no shade to them. They'll tell you the same thing. They've always said that they're slow, but Arch has a lot more of that speed, and so for him, the biggest thing is going to be if they decide because they're going to play Quinn in this game instead of Arch, they're going to have to make sure that he is very much protected. Now, this Texas offensive line is better, but our defensive line is too, right? Our front seven is probably our strongest piece. And so if we don't give him much time, if we make sure that the pocket collapses a lot earlier than they are ready for, he's gonna have to do some moving. And when he gets to moving, I don't think the game plan is gonna be as good as they want. Now, they're probably gonna be leveraging a lot of check downs and stuff similar to what they did when we played them last year. As long as our front seven and our linebackers are prepared for that, watch that film and be prepared to, pick off a few of those passes. Again, we should be good to go when it comes to this game.
Yeah. Brent Venables on his radio show kind of mentioned that Oklahoma's got a Jacoby Johnson package for this weekend. And I think that could be interesting to watch. We'll see how significant it is because it's going to be his first time playing wide receiver since high school, but he's got all the tools in the toolbox to be a successful wide receiver. And as we've talked about it at different times, you need a little bit more size on the outside, and Jacoby Johnson brings that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one thing they didn't want to do was put too much film, put much tape out there of him playing in different packages or in different plays when we played against Auburn. Because I mean, luckily enough, we did not need him at the end of the game. We were able to pull everything out. But at this point, you kind of need to go all stops in this one, and then from there you can start to tier up or down based upon how you feel the team is going. I think Michael Hawkins has done nothing but improve week over week. And because of that, I can see them using him a lot more in comparison to what they were doing before. And so I know that, Sooner fans are a little concerned going into this game. And I totally get that. Right, we're still ranked in the top 25, which is a plus. And for us, the bigger thing is that our defense is really who we've leaned on. And I mentioned this numerous times. I'm gonna keep saying that nauseum. This is what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna lean on this defense, and then we're gonna let the offense kind of bring it when they need to. And then I think that we'll have a good showing against Texas on the offensive side. So my concerns are kind of tapered down as far as this being, us getting blown out. I think the big difference is Texas really believes that they're going to be able to go out. I actually had a buddy of mine that's Texas fan, another content creator. He believes it's going to be like 52-17. He thinks Texas is going to go out there and just destroy this defense. And it's obvious he's never really paid attention to the way Brent Venables does defenses in his third year. It's never that easy. Yes, the like I said, the secondary is susceptible to deep passes. We watched Auburn do it, but you got to also have the time to do it. And again, Quinn dealing with the abdomen. If we put enough pressure on him and we get enough hits on him, it's going to be tough for him to be able to continue throughout the game because our linemen like to hit the quarterback or be as disruptive as possible. I'm sensing that they're going to stick to the check down. They're going to stick to the shorter plays and take what's given to them. But I don't see them really going. They're going to go deep a few times. They've got to test out the depth and test out the secondary a lot. But I think we're going to have some players out there that's going to surprise people that are going to be prepared for all the deep passes.
Yeah, it's going to be a very physical game. A bigger aspect of this is going to be the injury status of some of your wide receivers. And Brent Venables spoke about that in his radio show on Monday night on Deion Burks. He said, we'll see where Burks is the next couple of days. He was unavailable for the Auburn game. How much of an impact does it make if Deion Burks is available for this one?
Oh, it's huge, right? Because we all know that he's a deep threat. We also know that he's a threat in space. He's a threat in the jet sweep. I know. Don't kill me. He's a threat there. He's a threat everywhere. So he's one of those players that you would love to have on the field just because now Texas has to account for somebody that is talented. Granted, if he is injured and then not just hurting, you don't want him on the field. You want him to be out and you want him to get rest up so you can leverage him for the rest of the season. It's been unfortunate for us in the wide receiver room that everybody gets hit with the bug. And yeah, we'll just have to ride with it based upon how it goes. So to me, having Burks would be huge, but at the same time, we can really put to work the Jaquez Pettaways of the world and some of the younger players, the ones that Texas really they haven't paid much attention to on film. They're focused on, the bigger name players who probably won't play for the rest of the year. He did talk about Andrew Anthony as well, and mentioned that he had another small procedure, which that's Sooner fans why you haven't seen Andrew over the last couple of weeks. Sounds like something was kind of going on with that knee, maybe something floating. And he's expected back in a couple of weeks. And then Jalil Farouk's going to get that boot off. And so if he's going to get that boot off, now all you guys to do is get into a little bit of game shape, which he could probably play his way back into shape. I doubt that he was just sitting around doing nothing. Probably was on the bike, keeping that wind going. And so if you get Farouk back, later in the season with with an Andrew Anthony, if he's feeling better, you feel a lot better about this room.
Yeah, you got to have Deion Burks this week. I'll feel a whole lot more comfortable about where Oklahoma's going if you have Deion Burks available. I do think that everything continues to improve offensively, but he's such a game changer, man. He just makes so many good things happen for you in your offense every time he touches the ball. So get him back in the offense, get him with Michael Hawkins, get Michael Hawkins an opportunity to play with Deion Burks because he really hasn't had that because Deion Burks got dinged up in the Tennessee game and missed much of the second half. So you get him back. And I think it helps to open some things up a little bit in the offense for the Oklahoma Sooners. It's going to be a fun one, man. It always is. Just the environment, the atmosphere, everything that goes into the Red River Showdown down in the Cotton Bowl at the State Fair of Texas. It's going to be fantastic viewing experience for those in attendance, for those watching on TV, and we'll have so much more coverage for you this week here on Locked On Sooners. We will have our crossover show with Jonathan Davis of Locked On Longhorns for you Thursday. We'll have our keys to the game and predictions coming at you on Friday. We'll continue to follow all of the injury reports along the way. So make sure you're tuned in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So hit that notification bell and that subscribe button over there to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. You can also tune into his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube as well. Follow me at John9Williams, and you can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. You can follow the show at Locked On Sooners on all the social media platforms as well. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Boomer.